I'm going to unbox the Panasonic GH5s. Hey, there's no S on here. What gives? Here's the Panasonic GH5s. I just unboxed it. I haven't had a chance to really use it yet. I've just played around with it for a little bit. I'm also going on an airplane to Berlin and Switzerland in a little bit. So I'm going to take this with me and do as much test footage as I can. So subscribe to this channel and you'll see all that footage after I return and edit that together. In this video, I'm going to talk about the differences between the GH5s and the GH5. The main difference with the GH5s is the sensor. Panasonic calls this the Oversized multi-aspect sensor, and one of the things that enables you to do, you can change aspect ratio. And that's something you would do if you were shooting a feature film or you're trying to match this camera to other professional feature film cameras. The GH5s is a 10.2 megapixel in video as opposed to the 20.2 megapixel of the GH5, and that is supposed to be better in low light. It's a dual gain sensor design, and that means you can go from a 400 native ISO to a 2500 native ISO. So the sensor is larger than the GH5 sensor, even though it has less megapixels. And one of the benefits of that is you'll have a wider field of view. So a 12mm lens on a GH5 is like roughly a 24mm 35 equivalent. But on the GH5s, that is more like a 21mm, so you'll get a wider angle of view on the same lens. If you ever use the GH5 with its internal sensor stabilization, it's pretty awesome. And the GH5s doesn't have it, and at first I thought it was a bad thing, but from what I've read, a lot of professionals don't utilize the internal lens sensor stabilization. That's actually, it affects a lot of other things with the professional production, so that's why they got rid of it on the GH5s. Beyond just the sensor, you have several other upgrades to the GH5s. The GH5s shoots DCI 4K in 60, 50, 30, and 25 frames, versus the GH5 that only shoots DCI 4K in 23.98 and 24. So that's, if you're a hardcore filmmaker, that applies, that's a benefit for this. And when you shoot stills, you get 14 bits raw versus the 12-bit raw. I don't know why they put 14-bit in here, because on the GH5 is better suited for stills than the GH5s, but 14-bit raw, that means your photos are going to have more color depth. The GH5s, out of the box, you get V-Log-L. If you want V-Log-L in the GH5, you have to pay like $100 to get that installed. The GH5s upgraded the 3.5mm mic socket here. So in the menu, you have different features. The GH5s, you have plug-in power, which is basically phantom power, or you can choose line level in. So if you're recording an event from a mixer or soundboard, soundboards usually have a line level out. I don't usually shoot a lot of slow motion, but the GH5s has 240 frames slow motion versus the GH5's 120. Another upgrade is the night mode feature here. The only thing the night mode does is change your monitor or the EVF into, turn it to red. So there, I turned it on. So now if you're in a dark club or if you're shooting at night outside and you don't want the LCD or the EVF to really have a lot of light, blue light shining in your eye when you're looking at it, you can enable this night mode. The HDMI port has a 422 10-bit live output, and you can also record internally at the same time. The GH5, I believe, limits you, so when you're doing 422 10-bit output with the GH5's HDMI, you can't record internally, but the GH5s, you can do both. This socket on the front of the GH5s has been changed to timecode in and out. So they supply you with this adapter cable that you plug in here to your GH5s, and this is a BNC connection. So I have, for example, a Zoom F4. The Zoom F4 has a timecode out and in. So I can take the timecode from the Zoom H4, put it into the GH5s and jam sync it. So that way the time codes are going to match. The last upgrade with the GH5s is an accessory that the GH5s comes with, which is the new battery charger. Check this out. So here you have your smaller battery charger, which is USB now. And they supply you with all of this stuff. Versus what it was with the GH5 and the GH4, you had this kind of a, it wasn't huge, but you had this long cable, and this is a much bigger charger. So they were able to reduce the size of the charger. This is amazing. I'm really happy and impressed that they were able to do this. Now with this size, much better to travel with. And if I don't want my the AC wall charger here, I can just charge this battery with I guess any USB charger or my computer. So you get the same battery, but a brand new, better charger, in my opinion.